So this is the best and worst ways to learn, and most people typically aren't, taught the best ways to learn, especially in a classroom setting and especially in college, because we all really, even I've noticed that we really aren't learning the best. We always do the worst ways to learn. Starting off is building relationships, just kind of like what we do in educational psychology. Kind of making a community factor and where you can never really feel bad for saying a wrong answer, and always talking with your groups about projects and your responses and just them teaching you things. Safe learning environments are very important, because if you're never comfortable where you're at, kind of like with the community thing, you might feel like you're made fun of if you say something wrong. So it's very important to help learn, and you can always grow a lot more in these environments. Space learning is very big, with kind of just over time, like in a week, reviewing your notes from like Monday. You review them on Wednesday and Friday, along with the notes that you just wrote those days, and then continuing on. And space learning is very good because you can only keep stuff in your short-term memory for a couple of seconds. So the more you read over it and you practice it, it will just keep in your memory, and it will sooner or later transfer it into your long-term memory, and hopefully it does do that. Interval learning is kind of learning in chunks, and it's like a front-loaded class where you learn all the background information of why, say, like the World War II war started, and then you focus on all the little details that led up into the World War II. And then it's like the Treaty of Versailles and how Germany, didn't like it, and it was terrible for their economy, so they lashed out and invaded. And it kind of just makes you learn a little bit more, because it shows you all these little details you might have missed beforehand. The zone of proximal development was by Vygotsky. It's very important and useful, especially with education, because you kind of have to push people out of their comfort zone. You don't want them to be in the fear zone very often, because then they'll go into their lizard brain, and then they won't be able to learn because they're, fight, flight, or freeze. And then once they're into that like growth zone and opportunity zone, and they'll need a little bit of guidance in these still possibly, but once they get it, it's just kind of like handing off the baton and running with it. Scaffolding goes along with the ZPD and kind of like building it up. I always use this, and my parents, they use it with me with tying my shoes, and kind of like starting with completely doing it for me and having me watch, and then them taking my hands and tying it for me and stuff like that. And intentional teaching is very important to learn, because if you don't tell a student why they're learning something, they're not going to be as focused or care about it. So if they know what they're learning, they might actually, want to learn what is going on around them. And then nature versus nurture, you have to know this as a teacher, because every kid, like in this thing, this yellow airplane is completely upwards and above all the rest, so they could be in another developmental stage than the rest, and some could be below, and everybody's different. And then emotional connection, this is huge. I feel like I learned the most with this one, because if you emotionally connect yourself to even a story, or like 9/11, everybody knows exactly what they were doing on that day, and they can remember it like a recording, and remember breath for breath what they were eating 20 years down the line. And it's just, I feel like that's one of the best ways to learn for me personally. And then I know there's a lot of people that don't like to emotionally connect, but it works for most people. And then now to the bad ways of learning, which I think we all know what's going to be in here, and every college student does this before every test and exam. And that's cramming, and that is the worst possible one that we can ever do. Because it can help you pass the test you're studying for, but for a final, you won't remember any of the information that happened earlier in the semester because you didn't, distribute it well enough to where you put it in your long-term memory. And then a lot of teachers will teach the tests, and that's not a great way to learn either, because it's just they will give you exactly what's on the test, not tell you why you need it, not explain it, not tell you why it's useful. They'll just say it's because it's on a test. And then a lot of states are going to state standardized testing to test your IQ levels and your placements on all of these, which it's not good because it places a lot of pressure on a lot of kids with anxiety, and a lot of people have test anxiety and it can make them perform worse. And then I don't have a title for these slides because it was kind of talking about how I can help people when I become a social worker, since that's my major. And I feel like it can help a lot because I'll be helping with high school age students. And this will be useful because, I can talk to the teachers if they're, not teaching them well enough, if they're doing, and even high school kids are busy and they might not know how to learn correctly. So even learning that can help them in their lives later in the future.